as promised, we are going to start doing Tom's honest review of existing attractions and even past attractions. And today's is kind of a little bit of both. Today is Sunday, March 1st, 2026, and it is the final day of operation for Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And we're going to send it off in style. It is going to have the honor of being the first of these throwback or current Tom's honest review. So without further ado, my honest review of Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith. Before we get to the fun, we got to handle the business. That's what they say in the announcement at the attraction. And the business is that we just had a fantastic event celebrating the legacy of Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith. And we have some great collectibles for you to take home as part of that. Number one is this fantastic button-down shirt, button-up shirt, whatever you want to call it, featuring the G-Force. I have the G-Force Records logo. I have all the great signage from the attraction, probably all of which will still be in it come this summer. But either way, if you want to celebrate the life of a former Rock and Roller Coaster and also have something cool to wear to the new Rock and Roller Coaster, this is your best bet. It's on pre-order now. They're going to ship this summer. We will have these, but we're excited after many, many delays to present this great carousel product shirt to you. Other fantastic things we have some other great things that were made for the event. The I Survived the Rock and Roller Toaster Magnet. If you watch the event, you know the story behind this, but there were special shirts made for Aerosmith and for Imagineers who worked on the project. We have digitally scanned and replicated the art, thanks to our friends, our former Imagineering friends, and you could take home that art finally for the first time ever on this magnet. I Survived the Rock and Roller Toaster. As well, we have a great, you may have saw this last week, we have a great pin set featuring all of the different license plates that were on the Super Stretch limos. Each of these represents a different Imagineer who worked on the project. We worked hard with them to make sure these are absolutely correct. We have everybody's exact birth date and everything on these. So these are replicas of the real license plates, which most of them didn't even exist till today. A lot of them had already been replaced. Some limos had two limos had the same license plate. It's weird. But so this is a really cool thing we worked very hard to make happen. But you get all 5 of the license plates from the attraction in pin form, limited edition offering from us. And we also have the event pin, which is essentially a completer you could put in the middle of the card right here. It's a custom license plate we made. Of course, she says Ileana Douglas says in the pre-show, sorry folks, we gotta go. Well, Gotta Go gets its own license plate finally for Rock and Roller Coasters, the event pin and the completer. You can put on your card and you have the whole collection. If this isn't good enough, so the license plate I have over here is not the one we're selling. This is Paul Osterhout's real license plate from the attraction that he let us borrow. We borrowed it so we could correctly recreate this item, and we made a special version of the license plate. You're looking at it now as a special event offering. There's only 200 of these in existence, and when they're gone, just like Rock and Roller Coaster, they're gone for good. So get your Gotta Go license plate, limited edition, just 200 right now. All this and more at carouselofproducts.com. All these items are very limited. They were made just for our event, and so we expect them to be gone relatively quickly. I'd act fast if you want them, but we are, again. This item is pre-order. They're going to be arriving in the summer. I think we've got a good amount of these for everybody that wants one. These other limited edition items we may not have for everybody. With that out of the way, the business out of the way, the fun is just ahead. Let's get started on our honest review. And of course, we start that with a little bit of backstory, a little bit of history on Rock and Roller Coaster. In the mid-1990s, Disney was worried with Universal now in town and their attractions that were geared more towards a teen audience. It was an audience Disney didn't want to lose to Universal just down the street, and so they decided to start focusing on thrill rides. And the Hollywood Studios there was definitely a focus. In 1994, they opened the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, and right behind that, they decided, well, 5 years from now, we should probably have another big e-ticket to put on Sunset Boulevard. And that's when they started to work on a roller coaster attraction, and eventually, they knew from the very beginning they wanted it to be based on music. It was one of the few parts of Hollywood that wasn't represented, one of the few types of entertainment that the park didn't represent. Even though music was the name of one of the parking lots outside, it didn't really have a good representation in the park. So it was natural. What are things that are on real life Sunset Boulevard? And one of them was famous music venues and recording studios. And so it was decided that was the plan. Rock and Roller Coaster was the plan for many years. Eventually, Aerosmith signs on. The rest is history. I'm sure those of you who watched the event, you got the long version, several hours of history of this particular attraction, but I'll keep it short and sweet for our purposes here. But 1999, summer of 1999, Rock and Roller Coaster opens. It's an exciting time at studios, as I remember visiting that summer, and Fantasmic was still new and exciting. It's just across the way, and Rock and Roller Coaster was opening. It Sounds Dangerous opening around that time, which is a terrible attraction, but it just seemed like a lot was going on. Doug Live, there were just so many things at studios, and thankfully, of all those things, the things on Sunset Boulevard were very, very good. That being Fantasmic, and that being Rock and Roller Coaster. Rock and Roller Coaster was a lot of important things for Walt Disney World. It's the first launching roller coaster for Walt Disney World. It's the first inversion in the history of Walt Disney World. It's one of the first in the history of the Disney company. To this point, the other inversions existed all in Paris. So Paris had the Indiana Jones roller coaster. They opened in the early 90s, and then the mid-90s they opened Space Mountain de la Terre à la Lune, from the Earth to the Moon, which definitely a strong inspiration for Rock and Roller Coaster. I think Disney saw what they accomplished in Paris with, that their first launch coaster, their first inversions, and said, well, man, that's got to be something we have all around the world. But most importantly, one of those things they have to have all around the world are roller coasters with synchronized music tracks. And that begins with Space Mountain in Paris, and it's become a ubiquitous thing now. Could you imagine a world without synchronized music? Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind could not exist in any way, shape, or form. It would not be anything of value without its synchronized music tracks. So pretty crazy. This is still a very new concept when Rock and Roller Coaster comes our way in 1999. But so let's, as usual, start our experience from the beginning. You walk down Sunset Boulevard. The approach is a G-Force Records studio gate, if you will. And they have the upside-down limo hanging there off the top of the giant guitar. And the giant guitar strings and the neck extend all across the esplanade there, or the whatever you want to call it, all the way to the entrance of the attraction and the large guitar they attach to. And this makes quite a statement. I will say, Rock and Roller Coaster does not have the most fantastic facade of any e-ticket Disney's ever built. But what saved it really was the guitar. And I do love, it doesn't take itself seriously at any point. I think that's what was refreshing about Rock and Roller Coaster, is there's a lot of whimsy and a lot of fun. And the fun begins right away, where it's we're suspending reality instantly by having a limo hanging upside down out front. It takes a great photo. And Tony Baxter famously said when they're building Euro Disney, if it's not worth taking a photo of, it's not worth building. And so the truth is, like, what they had the budget for elsewhere at Rock and Roller Coaster, as far as the building was concerned, there was nothing really that would be very photogenic or very interesting. And they put a lot of money and thought into, okay, well, the facade's not great. What could we do? And what if we do this giant Fender guitar and we have the limo hanging from it, and it makes a statement? And not only that, it is absolutely worth a photo. I got a little emotional the other day. We went on our last ride on Rock and Roller Coaster, and Rosanna and I are out in the courtyard. That was the word I was looking for earlier. We're in the courtyard, and a family asked Rosanna to take their photo, and they took their photo with the guitar, and I got a little teary-eyed, thinking like, yeah, this has been a really great photo op. I'm glad it's going to stay. It's going to look different, but I'm very happy that's going to stay, because they did such a good job with it. It's a big, silly thing, but it's a really cool, big, silly thing. It's definitely photo-worthy, for sure. And throughout said courtyard, you have those G-Force Records plaques embedded in the ground. And I think they did a good job placemaking. And a project that didn't have the most robust budget, and they did what they could out there, and none of it felt out of place. I can't remember at any point, not until I got deep into this community and deep into the fandom and deep into lore and history later, did it ever dawn on me that there were budget conceits at Rock and Roller Coaster, and that the outside action was kind of done with budget in mind. It never crossed my mind, because it hit all the right notes, pardon my pun. All of it worked. It all felt right. Having roadie gear and boxes and all that kind of stuff that made sense were all good answers to the problem. And having the entrance just looks like lighting rigs. It's lighting rigs with signage, but Does your mind ever think like, oh, well, that was a good solution to a budget problem? No, it makes perfect sense because it's an attraction about music and concerts and that experience. So it worked out perfectly. But yeah, I mean, in later years, once you become a big Disney nerd like you and I are, then you start to go like, oh, well, they could have done more, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes the answer is that more didn't need to be done. It was logical, it made sense, and no regular guest was standing there thinking, this is really below Disney standard, as opposed to, that was probably a thought a lot of people had when they visited Dino-Rama at Disney's Animal Kingdom, is that this feels out of place. Like I get, they're trying to be, they're going for kitschy, and they're trying to fit this roadside theme, and they did. With the almost no money they had, they did the best they could. And those Imagineers should be commended, but at the same time, there was only so much lipstick to put on that pig. And I think a more effective coat of lipstick was put on Rock and Roller Coaster. Now, I'm not trying to compare the budgets of the two, because I bet Paul and the gang that worked on Rock and Roller Coaster would tell you they had much more of the budget they wanted for the project. And I guarantee you no one that worked on Dino-Rama would tell you they had any of the budget they wanted for their project. Either way. It all works. It feels like you're at a recording studio on Sunset Boulevard. I can't see how it doesn't feel that way. For those that don't know, the facade is a recreation of the Desilu Studios in Hollywood. It's a pretty nondescript building, but it's pretty enough, and it fit the Hollywood Studios or Disney MGM Studios aesthetic well enough that you wouldn't think anything of it. The other interesting thing is the Gravity Building. So the queue and the launch, the beginning of the launch, load and unload are in this building, which is masked by the Desilu facade. Then there is a launch tunnel that goes up into a gravity building. Gravity building is what we call a show building for a roller coaster. And that gravity building is just decorated like one of the sound stages at the park, so much so that it blew my mind. I remember many years ago when I found that out, when I realized, I looked at a soundstage backstage and went, oh, what's that one? I don't know which one that one is. And then I looked at, Google Maps finally came about. I remember when Google Maps came about, spending hours and hours looking at what Disney World looked like from above. And I'll never forget like looking at that and going, oh, that's Rock and Roller Coaster. It goes from one building into another building. And again, is it one of the, like, it's certainly more than they did for Guardians. Cosmic Rewind just has this giant gravity building looming over the park. You see it from everywhere. It's not the best solution. So the fact that something was done for Rock and Roller Coaster already considerably better than what happened with Guardians, some 20 some odd years later. But you go through, same thing in the queue the other night. I noticed from the outside, that exterior queue portion on the right side of the building has this really nice silver trim, which looks great from outside. And then I looked up at the roof and I go, man, this is just a shed. It never occurred to me that it's just, they put lipstick on a pig. They put this nice little border around what is a tin roof that covers the queue of this attraction. It's kind of crazy, but it worked and no one asked any questions. The queue winds around, and finally we get to enter through, it depends if you have single rider or if you're fast pass, you standby. You enter some entry portal into GeForce Records, and there's this great room that definitely feels kind of like it would be the entrance to a major recording studio. There are posters on the wall. In later years, they made digital posters, but the original conceit of the queue was to tell the history of recorded music. And it did a very good job. And in later years, Disney simply used the space to put, digitally add posters from their latest animated release soundtrack, or I remember Hannah Montana and High School Musical posters being in there over the years, stuff like that. But it's a cool room with the lighting, the big GeForce Records, the giant record above you in the ceiling. It's a cool space. And then you pass, continuing that history of recorded music, depending which side you're on, you'll see different pieces of memorabilia of that history of recorded music. For example, the standby side, you get to see all this recording equipment, and it says it's the person in charge of the division is microphone, which, I'm sorry, Kevin Rafferty, but that is the worst pun in the history of Disney parks. I'm supposed to believe there's a human being somewhere with the name microphone, but maybe I'm not, because again, the whole theme of this ride is kitsch and fun, and it's kooky and whimsical. And microphone fits that whimsy. None of this is taken seriously at any point in time, although these are real pieces of recording history in the midst of the microphone sign. And of course, one of the most touched surfaces in the history of mankind, the doors, the bead doors. Yes, who among us has not rubbed the bead wall? If someone is not guilty, let them speak now, but I highly doubt it. All I could think about when COVID hit was, man, we're going to lose the bead doors, because obviously there was a big focus on touching and surfaces being cleansed. And all I could think about was, man, that and that interactive wall at the Winnie the Pooh attraction in Magic Kingdom are going to be the first two victims of this pandemic as far as these parks are concerned. And they survived. Thank you. Thank you for saving the bead doors. They live on, and now in a post-COVID world, we're all vaccinated and ready to rub the wall once again. Good times. You proceed through some corridors. There are concert t-shirts all over the walls. Some of you may remember, at one point this attraction was sponsored by Hanes. And so they had to go through and change all the t-shirts to have Hanes tags on them as part of the overall corporate alliance with Hanes. Hanes also had a store at Disney Springs called Build-A-Tee. That was a thing. Yeah, this big strategic partnership with Hanes. There were other things involved. I can't remember them off the top of my head. I think there was something at Wide World of Sports, maybe. I think they sponsored a building, one of the arenas. Either way, Rock and Roller Coaster was a victim. In fact, the guitar pick outside, the giant guitar pick, also had the Hanes logo on it for a period of time. They were not there when the ride opened. It was somewhere in the middle in the 2000s that happened. But yeah, then Hanes left, and they took the tag off all the shirts and they put the shirts back again. And then we go into Recording Studio C, and we get the pre-show. Now, this pre-show has always been a masterpiece. I think, when I think of my favorite pre-shows at Walt Disney World, the two that always came to mind were Dinosaur and Rock and Roller Coaster. Soarin' might be in that conversation too. I like Soarin' a lot, but Rock and Roller Coaster felt special because they really tried this illusion that Aerosmith and these other characters were there. Setting it back, there's a recording studio there in the booth, and again, back then, as a first-time guest, there are so many things you don't realize or think about. You're just lost in the illusion. And you get lost in the illusion that they're there. Obviously, you know they're on screen, but things you don't think about. In 1999, it never occurred to me that, wow, that's really, how did they do that? That was not a thing. It's a really big projection format, and it had to look like one continuous shot. And as you get older, you gain an appreciation for these things. You start to realize, like, oh yeah, wouldn't that have to be done in one take? And how did you have like everything in focus from the foreground all the way to the back? And you learn, and again, if you watched our event this week, and you know, Jerry Rees shared the story, and it's quite a story of how they made that happen and how hard it was to produce. But what a great pre-show. Not only that, just the general vibe of it. You're coming into the recording studio, and Chris, could you grab my black Les Paul, is said. And back when the ride first opened, there was a cast member who would be sitting in there who would then take the guitar and bring it to them. It was a thing. He didn't last long because, well, he or she didn't last long. It was Chris, because Chris could be either. It didn't last long, and the park saw to that pretty quickly. They're like, we don't need to pay for this. This doesn't need to be a thing. But there were ideas in place of how to bring this to life and make it feel more and more like Aerosmith is actually there. I know they talked about it didn't actually happen, but they talked about having something in the room that would move. They'd hit something in the recording studio, and it would move something outside, or a board would move, something like that. But of course, it did pay off with the pre-show goes on, and he says, wait a minute, I love that idea. That's because the cast member in the room with you had a prompt, and that cast member got to spiel and say, how about some backstage passes? They got to be a part of the show. And again, it brought some much needed realism because you have the characters only there via a screen. But so many quotable lines. She's usually not like this. Yeah, she's usually worse. I got you a really fast car. Make it a super stretch. It's another one of those like Muppet Vision and Dinosaur and Soarin' where it's highly quotable. It's great theme park schlock. I have zero notes. I love it. I miss it dearly. There was a part of me that was really heartbroken a couple months ago when they took it away early because I didn't get to say goodbye to it. And then a part of me today that's kind of happy because I feel no reason to go say goodbye today on the final day of operation to Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith, because the thing I love most about the attraction, the thing that made it the most fun for me, is already gone. Don't get me wrong, love the Aerosmith music on the ride. It's tremendous. But the thing that made it Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith is Aerosmith, and this is their physical appearance to me as a guest and their interaction with me, and it's gone. And so I don't feel anything for this ride at that point, I'm sorry to say. But a tremendous pre-show. What's not to love about it? We need more theme park schlock. Just have fun with pre-shows. Be kitschy and whimsical and fun. Have fun with the guests. I feel like this is kind of a lost art because I don't. I'm gonna single out Cosmic Rewind again. I hate that pre-show. I hate it. I think there's the Glenn Close part where you get your necessary story exposition. Totally understand that. The part with Terry Crews it's just painful. It's just really painful, and I don't know, it has the wrong kind of guest interaction. That what do they call themselves? And someone inevitably yells out, "Day drinkers" or "drunks" or whatever, and it's so painful. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. It just doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same vibe, the same connection with me that Rock and Roller Coaster's pre-show had. And I'll say this: Cosmic Rewind is a far better ride. It is a far better ride. Rock and Roller Coaster had the better pre-show. You can fight me on it in the comments if you'd like, but I will die on that hill. Absolutely. So, of course, the car is waiting for you out in the alley. The doors open. You go out to the alley, and this is probably my second favorite part behind the pre-show is just the load area in the alley and watching the car take off at the launch. I love the looking through the chain link fence, the idea of let the guest self-select if the experience is right for them. You show them what they're going to experience, and they can decide then and there. Like, they couldn't show me the inversions, but they showed me the 60-mile-an-hour launch. And I can decide now if that's right for me or not. And I think it's the right amount of, it builds the anxiety for people, which for some people that's the fun. It's what did Tony Baxter say? It's risk minus death equals fun. And so you feel like you're taking a risk, but you're at Disney and it's a safe attraction. So you're not going to die. And so that's going to equal a fun time. For some people, it is that excitement of, oh, this ride, I've never experienced anything that launches 60 miles an hour. It's kind of scary, but maybe this is going to be really cool, I think. And for some people, it's just an invitation to the chicken exit, which is also okay too. That's the purpose of it. But I love the grittiness of the alley. You're in this, and they made it sort of an active work site as a way to explain the barriers, to explain why there's fencing and all these other barriers in your way, but it works so perfectly. There's something works so well about looking through the chain link fence, and you hold on to the chain link fence, you're watching through the little holes with excitement as the limo takes off. And the alleyway is beautiful. It's a beautiful space. And it makes me sad as to the parts of the ride. It's like, well, what if you did a ride like this, but you built more sets for it to go through, like more actual pretty show scenes? But at the same time, do you need pretty show scenes when you're launching people at 60 miles an hour? That is the question. That is the question. And you go under the parking garage and into the load area, and you load into your super stretch limo, which is a hell of a ride vehicle. They're gorgeous trains. They're just really, really cool looking. Who doesn't want to ride in a super long Cadillac roller coaster train? Who's going to say, it's not, that's lame? Okay, sure. It's a very sleek looking ride vehicle. Now you take off towards the launch and you've got this big, again, the whimsy and the fun. They're things that don't really make sense. There is what looks like a traffic sign, and for some reason it's hanging off of a tunnel in Los Angeles. That wouldn't be where that sign is, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's just fun and kooky. and the anticipation builds. The train locks back into place. You have the countdown, the 3, 2, 1, go, and it's Steven Tyler just screaming his head off, which could not be more perfect. And you go off into the launch, and thus begins your 60 some odd seconds of fun on Rock and Roller Coaster. Now, for me, this was my first launching roller coaster and my first inverting roller coaster. And so I remember being very, very scared of this thing. And honestly, I think when you go to like a Six Flags or a Cedar Point or something of the sort, it's always more scarier to just look at an exposed steel roller coaster. I think that's always scarier, and just see where you're going. I kind of like the unknown aspect more. I think that made it so much easier for me to ride Space Mountain as a kid or Rock and Roller Coaster. Just like they showed me the launch, I knew what I was in for, and didn't make things easier because that train just, like, it's quite, I mean, you've seen it. It's quite a launch. It goes very fast. And with the flashing lights of the camera being taken, it's all very intimidating. But I think the surrounding was just, the surrounding elements were just so fun. As a younger guest, I think you couldn't help but get caught up in that and be excited about the attraction. I remember being super nervous, but at the same time thinking, like, this countdown is really cool, and this digital board and all of that, and just it takes off and you go up in that loop and the loop ends, and I just remember thinking, oh, that's it. Those are fun, and they're not really that bad. I remember thinking later, it's like, oh, a big drop is so much worse than an inversion for me. And I always thought it'd be the opposite. I always thought it'd be like, oh, an inversion's got to be something worse than a big drop on a roller coaster, but that wasn't the case, at least for me. Maybe it's different for everybody. I don't know. Let me know in the comments, is a big drop not worse? Are there people, and it has to be you've actually done an inversion, because I know people, if you've never done an inverting roller coaster, people always be like, oh, I can't. Like I've done this big roller coaster with this big drop, but I can't go upside down. And I'm just like, that's the fun part. It's like sometimes the drop is the scary part, especially like when you go to Six Flags or Cedar Point, you have 200, 300, 400 foot drops. Like then you're like, oh, holy Moses. Like that is quite a bit. And you're watching the whole way down. Rock and Roller Coaster is great because you kind of just get thrown around in the dark, not in a bad way. And then all you see are these flashes, these moments of these plywood cutouts. They're very, very fun art style, lit up very bright, and you fly by them real fast. And there's another inversion later. You have the corkscrew later on, which is also fun. And then then it's over. It's real quick and short. And Paul said something to me that resonated. I remember when Tron opened at Magic Kingdom, people said, I just wish it was longer. And I said to them, it's like, but what would you do? Like, what more is there? Like, think about what works about Tron. At Tron, you launch at this high speed. It's this incredible launch room and lighting effects, and everything goes off, and you launch outside. You're under this canopy where the lighting effect is following you, and then you enter the grid, which is another big moment of, look at this space. It's like modern day Space Mountain, and you're passing through these things, and there's a light cycle racing alongside you, and they crash and explode. And think about all the things of a light cycle chase or a light cycle scene in a Tron movie. What else is there? Like, yeah, it's not a super long ride, but what else would you have it do? Like, you're just going to go have it do its like figure eight thing again? I think it's served its purpose. Like, yeah, I think the mark of a great attraction is you don't want it to end. I'll never forget, especially early on at Flight of Passage. You'd get to the end scene and it goes, and it sucks you back into your body. You're no longer an avatar. And you could audibly hear enough people at once go, aw, that they were upset that the ride had ended. And I think that's so important. It's like, of course, every great ride should be, oh, I want to go do it again. I think lengthwise, Rock and Roller Coaster and Tron, I can't fathom what more you would want to it. And sure, remember at this point, multi-launch was not an option. Single launch had not been done. This was a new thing, this single launch. And so no one's sitting there thinking, well, what if we launch them again halfway through the ride? That was not occurring to anyone in 1999. So you could bring up Velocicoaster all you want and other rides of the sort. There wasn't an option. And so think about it. It's, okay, well, we're going to do the launch, which is the big hook of this ride. You're going to launch, you're going to ride around a bit. Then we have to have a brake run because for capacity, we need to get another train out on the tracks. And so you go through the brake run. And at that point, it's, well, what can gravity do for us now? And the answer was, well, gravity could get us through a corkscrew and we could do a little more, and then we go to the unload. There wasn't A, the opportunity to do more, and B, what more would Rock and Roller Coaster have done? Like, we had the real big inversion off of a 60-mile-an-hour launch. We did a corkscrew. We flew through all these items. What more of the story is there to tell at that point? I think you do. You leave the guest wanting more. I think people are like, well, it was super fun. Let's do it again. And Tron, I think, gets the same reaction. I know as fanboys and fangirls, we all are like, yeah, oh yeah, Tron could be longer. But really, really, truly think about it. And think if that makes any sense. Think if that makes any sense. Because I don't think it does. I think in the case of those two, it just really doesn't. I think there are other rides where I feel more that way. Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is one where there's a little bit of, it would have been nice if there was a little more after that big drop coming out of the mine. It just feels like it's just a real quick, like, over the hill and you do this, and you turn and you're at the house. It would have been nice if there was a little more there. It's not the end of the world, but I think in the case of Mine Train, that's the one where I do feel like this could have been a little longer. I don't like Slinky Dog Dash, but I think that's long enough too. Like, that one I feel the same. It's like, what more is there to do with this? What more is this ride going to do? But yes, you go to the unload, which we've arrived at the concert. We're under this tent. Again, it's budget conscious, but at the same point, it is correct to the story. It is what it would look like if we pulled up to the red carpet to go to this event. It's exactly what it would look like. There's just walls and hedges and a tent for us to park under. That's what it would be. And you exit, and you're backstage at the concert, and you're watching from backstage, and it's on screen. And you have the gift shop, and I will say this much: the gift shop, to me, left a lot to be desired. At no point did I ever think, oh, this is a cool store, because it was just a bunch of, like, concert equipment and instruments and things like that. And yeah, it's not the strongest. It's just like, that's the one place in the ride that even at a young age, it was apparent to me that they just, whatever they can get their hands, like soundboards and wiring and lights and whatever was laying around, they just put it on top of store displays, and that was, project's done. And it's not the most vital part, but it always good. I like when there's a good story all the way through, and I don't really understand necessarily what the story is of the space. Are we still just backstage? Is it just some sort of backstage space? Are we in the production truck or something? I don't know, but it's not the strongest part of the experience. Rock Around the Shop. It's a good shop name, though. I do like the sign for it outside with the guitar neck. It's cool. So all in all, Rock and Roller Coaster is a weird one, because I think earlier in my fandom, I shared a thought that a lot of people had. There is a roller coaster out in the world that has the same track layout as Rock and Roller Coaster. So I think we assumed it was an off-the-shelf thing, that Disney just bought this roller coaster layout and then decided, well, we're Disney, we have to theme this. This has to be more than it is at some amusement park in Europe. So how are we going to do that? That's not the case. It is a custom layout that was made for this attraction, and then the rights to sell the track layout were available to the manufacturer, and so they did it. And that was a great misconception, I think, and it gave me a greater admiration of Rock and Roller Coaster. Is Rock and Roller Coaster one of the greatest e-tickets in the history of Disney parks? It's a really, I want to say yes, and there's a part of me that's like, you can't say that, because it's not, Tower of Terror from start to finish is just so immersive and enthralling, and it's a story. It's an incredible piece of original storytelling. under the guise of the Twilight Zone intellectual property. I want to say it for Rock and Roller Coaster because I love Rock and Roller Coaster, and I love Rock and Roller Coaster just because it's really, really fun. It's just so fun. You'd have to be a real nasty curmudgeon to dislike Rock and Roller Coaster. The only way I can understand you disliking Rock and Roller Coaster is if it's something that's too much for you to ride. And I can see that because you've never been on it. Like, why would you have any emotional attachment to a ride you've never experienced? That would make no sense. But as someone that's experienced, I find it real hard to not have some emotional attachment to it because of how, just from top to bottom, from start to finish, it's just fun. From the upside down limo outside to the kooky pre-show to all the puns Kevin Rafferty wrote throughout the queue and the load area, lock and roll parking and all of these things. It's just really fun. And so, there's a part of me that says, yeah, you can't compare it to Tower of Terror and Indiana Jones Adventure and Journey to the Center of the Earth. You can't. You can't because these Imagineers weren't given the budget to do that. They weren't given the money to be those three rides. So I think what you have here is a better testament to great storytelling through Walt Disney Imagineering than Dino-Rama. I know, look, I don't want to knock the Dino-Rama people. I do believe they did the best with what they had and turned chicken excrement into chicken salad. I do believe that. But I think in the case of Rock and Roller Coaster, it's a much greater success story where they took an idea. It wasn't even something that no one else had done. A competitor in the field, King's Dominion, had a roller coaster like this. And that was part of the inspiration. And they looked at, they knew they wanted to do this Rock and Roller Coaster, and that was probably the best way to do it. And they took that and they made it what is very completely a Disney experience. They took something that really at its core is an amusement park, a Six Flags Cedar Point King's Dominion style attraction, and made it so much more than that by just giving it a lot of heart. There's so much heart in this attraction. You could tell how much Aerosmith wanted to do it and how much fun they had doing it. You could tell how much fun the actors had. Ken Marino still talks about how much fun he had, despite the fact that he was in a 100 and something degree room under lights. He couldn't touch anything because it was all molten hot, all the metal buttons and everything on the board. And despite those incredibly difficult filming conditions, everybody came out of this saying, man, this was so much fun to do. And that fun they were having translates so much into the attraction that you can't help but smile. You can't help but smile experiencing it. I mean, that pre-show was a source of pure joy for so many people. Never forget the first time guests, you always tell they do the look back. When the person would say, how about some backstage passes? They'd be, what? And it's one of those moments where it's much more low budget than when the elevator creeps forward in Tower of Terror, but it is just as powerful. And I love that. I love that human element there. They did the best with what they had, and by doing so, made something indelible that's really going to stick with people. And I think Disney World is going to realize how much it stuck with people in a couple months when they open Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets, because I hate to say this. I hate to be that guy. I love the Muppets. Muppet Vision will always be in my heart. But I don't know that the Muppets belong at Rock and Roller Coaster, and I don't know that it's going to work. I don't know that it's going to work, and I think Rock and Roller Coaster was so much fun and so well done that it is going to be real hard to ever reskin this attraction and have people not upset about it. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want Rock and Roller Coaster to be another one of these things we walk by and just go, man, I really miss when that was something else. There's been too much of that at Walt Disney World in our lifetimes. Been way too much of that. I want everything to be better so we can move on. I want the next thing to be better so it doesn't hurt. Like I love World of Motion at Epcot. I loved it. But Test Track, honestly, was spectacular. And so it's like, well, this is a totally different thing. I miss World of Motion, but we got something really great. And you don't have that resentment when you walk by Test Track. And so that's the goal. That's the standard in theme parks, is to be as good or better than what came before. And I worry about this project. But of course, don't worry. There'll be a Tom's Honest Review of Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets later this summer. So stay tuned for that. But I think the legacy of Rock and Roller Coaster, people are inevitably going to have a nostalgia for it because they had a really good time. And I'm one of those people. And yeah, it's not Indiana Jones, and it's not Tower of Terror, and it's not Journey to the Center of the Earth. It's never going to be those things. And it didn't have to be. It just was something that was an awesome, really fun part of your day at Disney's Hollywood Studios. And I think it made a really powerful connection with people that will be remembered for decades to come. I think you'll hear people bring up the Aerosmith version of this ride probably for the rest of our lifetimes. So I think that's high praise. That's as high praise I can give this particular attraction. Do you agree with my review of Rock and Roller Coaster starring Aerosmith? Well, let me know in the comments what you agree with, what you don't. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. Please subscribe for more. We're going to be doing weekly honest reviews now of current and past attractions, and of course, we're going to keep doing them for those brand new ones as well. So I hope you enjoyed this, and rock on, dudes.